I imagine he's running probably 60 miles an hour, 65.
Um, did they ever figure out was the car just trying to beat the locomotive, or did they obviously are they not
Really, I
human
don't know. In all probability, they did try to beat him across and
and just didn't
didn't
make
make
it?
it.
And you were how old when that happened?
I was about 7 or 8 years old.
And you remember that vividly,
Very
right?
well, yeah.
Did any of the family show up to identify the bodies or anything like that?
Well, not while I was there.
Okay, they probably got you out of the way.
Matter of fact, we went to bed early then. Wasn't anything to do.
Yeah,
We had radios that come out, and we'd listen to the radio. I used to listen to Little Orphan Annie and Amos and Andy, and
these were like radio plays that would come on at night.
but that's the only recreation we had then. Everybody went to bed early.
After the sun went
Yeah,
down.
eat supper and let it settle, and maybe listen to the radio a little bit and go to bed. 8 and 9 o'clock, and got up early. Always got up at daylight.
So say early teens now, say 12 and 16. Right before you started, your dad trying to get your seniority started with the railroad. That I guess coming of age area. Anything in particular happened there?
Well, no, when my dad uh, bid in the night ticket job at Jackson, the old Union Station. Of course, we moved to Jackson.
Was there?
And,
I don't mean to pause you for a second. Was there any particular reason your father wanted to move you guys to Jackson?
well, it was a better paying job, and it's closer to his old home place. He and mother both came from between Dyer and Rutherford, the old home place,
Okay.
and he eventually got back and when he retired, he was at Rutherford.
Hmm.
But then we moved to Jackson when I was 13, and I started the junior high, old junior high on Dedrick. Then I went 1 year to high school, and it was during wartime, and Dad wanted to get me started on the railroad, get my seniority established, and they wouldn't give me a job until I finished high school. So I went to Miss Steele's private school on Chester Street, right across from the old Webb Williamson Hospital. And I finished in the private school and went to work when I was 17 years old.
We've seen there are pictures of Union Station down at the Railroad Museum,
Yeah.
and of course it's completely gone now. I think it burnt down. What was left of it burnt down sometime or torn down in the
I
early
think
'80s.
so.
But obviously your father worked there when it was really busy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it was Union Station, and then down the road on Royal there was obviously the station for NC and St. L. But the Union Station was it owned by the GM&O?
It was owned by the GM&O, but the Illinois Central had an office, and the Illinois Central come right by the west side,
Mm-hmm.
and the GM&O come up the east side.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a ticket agent over there that sold tickets and give out information, and uh, it was a busy place. Now, people would Wallace's restaurant was right next to
Mm-hmm.
the IC side over there, and a lot of people ate there. They had pretty good food, and people would come down to see the trains come and leave. It was
A sight.
something for people to do, you know.
A little excitement in
At
Jackson.
passenger train time, there's always a crowd walking around the depot down there.
Was Union Station used as kind of a if you needed to swap trains to go to a certain destination, would some people have to get off at Union Station and wait for the next one to carry them on to where they were intended to go?
Well, no, because the only time you'd wait for a train, like if they got off of the Mobile Rebel to get on the Little Rebel to go down the Tennessee Division to New Orleans.
Okay.
And they might get off and wait till it ran. But it ran all the way to Mobile. I mean to St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
St. Louis to.
Trying to think of something else to ask about Union Station. When you were, of all your memories at Union Station, do you remember anything particularly exciting happening with, I don't know, being a teenager in your late teens? Did you ever get in any, say, fights with some of the other kids or anything like that?
Well, no, I can remember my my dad, of course, worked at night, and Maurice Stencil, you've heard him talk about Maurice. He was a kid when I went to work on railroad, still going to high school, and his father was a special agent. They call him special agent. He was a railroad dick. And he was always around the Union Station when the passenger trains ran. And he'd bring Molly down there. Molly's mother had passed away. And Molly would sit in the corner, and Dad had a big iron safe to keep money and stuff in. And Molly would get his lessons on that safe. And in wartime, they ran a lot of special made trains with just servicemen on them. And they ran so many trains, it's unbelievable.
Isn't it true during World War II the government took over the railroads? Did they not? Or was that just during World War One?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. In World War One they did. I don't know if they did in World War II.
No, but they run a lot of oil trains from here to Cairo through here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where they come from. And just solid tankers. But anyway, after I went to work in 43, about 2 months, I got cut off. And my dad and Mr. Werple, who was over the signal department, were good friends. And well, no, now this was later on. Dad got me a job in the maintenance department with a fellow by the name of Kenneth Fannings, ran a steam ditcher. And they had high water in East St. Louis, all around St. Louis. And I rode a passenger train to Columbia, Illinois, and stayed on the camp cars. And helped them on the ditcher. And I climbed out on the ditch and pulled some vines off of it for them. And I caught poison oak on this arm. And I stayed up there until it got infected. And I had to come home and rode the Little Rebel to Jackson. And Little Rebel had a place to eat in the coach, you know. Mm-hmm. And this colored man that worked in there, served food, sandwiches, stuff. He'd bring a wet towel about every hour and wrap around my arm because I had so much fever and sick. And I never will forget, Mother and Dad met me, and my arm was such bad shape they carried me up to the hospital, and they gave me some shots and all, and cleaned it up, bandaged it. And then, after I got over that spell, They needed brakemen at East St. Louis running out of there to Tams, Illinois. And so J.C. Woods, who I followed on the seniority list, he was several years older than I am. He and I caught the passenger train and went up there and got us a room together in East St. Louis, and worked out of Tolson Yard for about a month. Steam engines running to Tams, Illinois. And of course, I wasn't married, just a kid. And I got homesick, and I told him, I said, I'm going home, JC. I had enough of this. And he said, well, I'm going too. So we come back home, and then, of course, I was drafted. When I turned 18, I was drafted in the Navy, and I was gone from December 43 to June of 46. And I come back, and they still had steam engines, but they started getting diesels. We get about 28 train crews on. And after they got fully dieselized, well, there wasn't but 7 train crews.
In the entire division, is that what you mean?
Yeah, and they cut us way back. Because those diesels were pulling 3 and 4 trains. That many cars, more cars than they could pull with a steam engine.
3 and 4 times as many as you would have on a steam train.
But it was really a sight to see. We carried those steam engines to Berkeley, Kentucky, and set them in the passing track. And I guess we had over 30 or 40 steam engines there at one time. The reason for the Cairo River Bridge, you couldn't carry but 1 steam engine across at a time. When we were double heading, we had to cut one off and take it across and let one pull the train across. And
now, when this was going on, you were in the Navy when you got drafted. You got out because it was near the end of the war, correct? Okay. You told the story of that German soldier in a previous video we did, and I actually went online just a couple weeks ago, in fact, thinking about doing this, and looked up "lick me an osh." Yeah. It does mean kiss my ass. So you remembered it right.
Yeah.
Besides that, with that German soldier, was there anything else that happened while you were enlisted that you remember that maybe we didn't talk about before?
Well, at Fort Eustis Naval Hospital, I stayed there a good while, and I was in the transportation department, and which was real good duty at that place. I'd take bus loads of nurses to shopping sprees. I'd take big high-ranking officers to Washington, D.C., the Pentagon, and bring them back and things like that. And we had this big we had thousands of German prisoners over at the back of the hospital. And that's where this one that worked with me, they had, just like prison, they had trustees, and they'd let them work and do what they wanted to.
Now, how old was this German prisoner? You would have been 18, 19?
Yeah.
And how old was he? In his 40s, you said?
Oh, I'd say at least 40 years old.
And
he was a lot older than that.
So there's no way he's still alive today, then, really, if you think about it. He'd be over 100, in fact.
Yeah. He said he didn't live too far from Berlin. Really? But I couldn't get too much out of him because
he didn't know a lot of English.
No, and couldn't talk much. But he was a good fellow. Yeah. I liked him. He was nice to me. He loved a beer better than anything.
What was his favorite brand? Do you remember?
Oh, no, I have no idea.
Just any at that time.
Yeah, I imagine any kind of.
So you get discharged from the Navy. You come home to where?
Here to Jackson.
Here to Jackson. And you started doing what?